understand zombie films aren't film? What we are talking about on this episode of the Culture Cast is not classified as film per the Academy because it doesn't feature boring, trite bullshit. I mean, that's not necessarily the case anymore. That was like 10 years ago, was Oscar bait all the time. I mean, it's like a Green Book thing, right? Like, why did that win? Why did Oppenheimer win? I'm just asking, I'm just asking questions here.
The big, well-made studio movies, the handful, the Oscars is akin to the MTV Video Music Awards. Like, here's the nominations for the 5 videos we played this year. Like, that's kind of what the Academy Awards. Studios aren't pumping them out like they used to. You had like hundreds of movies a year and like, we'll whittle it down to 5 or now 10. Now it seems like there's 20 movies and we liked half of them. Here they are.
Yep. That's very true. Yeah, things like Versus wouldn't get anybody's attention for a number of reasons, not namely the one that it's in a foreign language, which puts it automatically in a weird spot for the Academy because, boy, that may as well not even be a movie for them. At least not one that gets anything other than a passing nod. Foreign language films, great. Awesome.
Well, Parasite won just recently. But
that feels like a long time ago.
Well, yeah, but when Versus came out, certainly no one was going to give this an award in any country, I don't think. Maybe the Chainsaw Awards or the Saturn Awards would give it an award.
Hell, this was rough to even get made in Japan, let alone be lauded.
Well, and man, getting made in Japan is one thing, but then also being able to be found in this country, because up until recently, this was not necessarily easy to find. And then Arrow put out Blu-ray 4K. Ryan's holding it up because he's the physical media guy.
Yeah, just Blu-ray.
Just Blu-ray, no 4K.
No, not yet. They'll probably no. This probably won't ever come out in 4K because of the way it was filmed.
So, is your version 2 hours and 10 minutes?
This has the Versus and Ultimate Versus on here, so it doesn't. I didn't watch the Ultimate Versus this time. I just watched the original version.
I have not seen the Ultimate version. I mean, I know what it entails. But
that's the version that I watched. And
did you watch it on your Plex?
Yeah.
That was 2 hours tops, man.
No, the one that I have is 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Oh, well, then we both want. Okay, then I watched the Ultimate cut. Hey, yeah, happy ending.
Yeah. But so, on this episode of the Culture Cast, we're finally getting to splatter movies because sometimes recordings don't happen because of things. But that recording will be made up later in the month for Blood Feast. But we're talking about 2000s Versus, if you can't tell, since we've mentioned it about 5 million fucking times at this point. 行くぞ. So the film is directed by Ryuhei Kitamura, written by Ryuhei Kitamura and Yudai Yamaguchi, and it stars a whole lot of actors whose names I'm unfortunately probably going to butcher. Tak Sakaguchi, Hideo Sakaki, Chieko Masaka and Kenji Matsuda. And the film is about, well, it's about zombies in the woods and the Yakuza who fight them. I mean, there's a plot here, I think. I mean, the movie thinks there's a plot here. But there's a lot of running, a lot of swords, and a lot of zombies, and a lot of gore. It wouldn't be Splatter Month if there wasn't some gore and splatter. So yeah, that's what we're talking about in this episode of the Culture Cast. So Father Malone, I'm going to kick it to you first, given that you did not own the physical media, though I know when we get to Ryan, it may not be because he knew this movie imminently and wanted to own it because he'd seen it before. I now understand that that's a thing people do. Father Malone, what did you think of Versus?
This is my first time watching it. I had never heard of the film. So always curious to check out anything in the zombie genre, particularly pre kind of this 2000 era before zombies exploded and became what they are. So this is a guy working from a pure heart. He's working from a love of zombies that predates 28 Days Later and Zack Snyder and all the bullshit. So from that perspective, I really liked it because he's obviously paying homage to Sam Raimi more often than not when it comes to that splatter and the sort of inventiveness with the camera, and a whole lot of 90s sort of nonsense gets mixed up in here too. But overall, I think it's too long by, like, say, our version, 40 minutes. The movie needs to be 90 minutes long. If it was lean, it would be fucking perfect. As it is, it's wildly enjoyable. I was never bored. I just kept, on occasion, I thought, oh, are we fighting again? But
yeah, pretty much.
But I do want to mention the last actor you mentioned, Kenji Matsuda. He's sort of the A1 nut boy, the Natalie dressed green shirted cuckoo berry in the movie. He's awesome. He's so arch, but like he's so perfectly understands the movie in ways that I think some of the other actors don't. But I found him wildly entertaining. So that's my sum up of the movie.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, this one is, I agree with Father Malone, a little long in the tooth. I watched the shorter version, and even I thought a good 20, 25 minutes could have been shaved off. You mentioned all the things that this has, and you forgot just how many times they showed people rolling down the side of a hill. At the end of this movie, I thought that was a legit mode of transportation by that point.
I didn't mention it because I found it to be a bonus.
I mean, it was quite comical, but man, it happened so many times. If you would have just slimmed those down by half, it would have cut 10 minutes of this film. The thing that I really just started falling in love with was, it seems like every other scene, he was clearly just ripping off something that he loved in another movie and somehow just compiling them all together just made it fun. I mean, the amount of times he took the camera and did a full 360 around two people in a duel just to try to be John Woo for a minute was just almost like cute, to say in a weird way. The way that he stole the Evil Dead tracking shots through the forest was perfect. I've never seen anyone else ape them that well. And it even got to the point where he threw somebody up against the tree like they did with Bruce in that very first movie, and it works perfectly for this. It was the exact way he should have filmed it. And yeah, it was endearing. It was fun. Never had a clue what the hell was going on. I didn't need to. It was just entertaining. I'm still confused, like how we started this with this random like samurai showdown, and then 4 minutes later there was somebody rising from the dead from a Yakuza kill. It was such a weird opening, but yeah, if you can get past that, it is absolutely worth checking out.
So I'm sure the three of us have seen Ryuhei Kitamura's American debut, which was his direction behind Midnight Meat Train, one of the hilariously titled movies that doesn't deserve such a terrible title. I know it's the original name of the Barker story. It's an amazing movie, but it has a terrible title because it sounds like the gayest of gay porno. That being said, I really enjoy that movie, and you can see some of that. It sounds like a really gay porno. It does, which is fine. I mean,
I would rent that.
Or the Midnight Meat Train.
I would own that on physical media.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And in fact, I do. I'll show you my steelbook of Midnight Meat Train in a while.
I enjoy that movie. I actually rewatched Midnight Meat Train as well, just to kind of see what from this was there in that. And I mean, yeah, you both have already kind of alluded to it. The camera is there are a few moments where the camera's not moving. There are very few moments where the camera is stationary because, again, there's just a level of you being in the scenario with the characters, either over their shoulders or almost standing in the group with them, that the movie does a very good job of, which, again, zombie movies, sometimes the best ones, they do a really good job at putting you in the situation with the characters. To both of your points, I have literally no idea for the most part what is going on most of the time. I understand the plot, and as much as I think I've watched the movie 3 times, I read the plot on Wikipedia as well. It's kind of hard to follow because for the most part, the plot is set dressing. It's all about how can we do crazy samurai sword Yakuza gunplay nonsense for 2 hours and 10 minutes, which we've both already commented on it. I think I will also reinforce this movie didn't need 2 hours. It doesn't need an extended cut. I mean, look, if you're a real big fan of this movie, that probably may have caused you a moment of anger. But at the same time, like, I don't think this movie needs to be 2 hours, let alone 2 hours, 10 minutes, or the hour 45, I think. Is that, or it's 2 hours? Is it just 2 hours on the normal cut?
It's 2 hours normal cut, and then 2 hours and 11 minutes on the Ultimate Versus.
Either way, too long. 90 minutes, baby.
Yeah. Keep in mind, too, that Ultimate Versus is not just adding on 11 minutes. He went in and reshot scenes. He replaced things in the original version that he always had a problem with.
It looked great. That I know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the film is well shot. It doesn't look, I wouldn't say it doesn't look cheap. I mean, it looks of the time that it was made. Like you mentioned, Father Malone, like the early 2000s. Like, it really looks like the early 2000s in a way that's like hard to quantify other than just sit down and watch the movie and you'll see exactly what we mean. It's a lighting thing. It's a camera and film stock quality. It's a lot of things.
I think if I had seen this in the year 2000, I would have hated it for being the sort of melange of all the 90s sort of ticks and tricks that I was sick of from American filmmakers. Not seeing what people often, when they talk about Tarantino, they talk about how, he's remixing genres and stuff here. This guy's remixing genre, like one on top of another. I think about like a movie like From Dusk Till Dawn, where it's sort of a heist movie or like a getaway criminal movie, and then suddenly it's a vampire movie, and that shift in that movie felt jarring to me. This movie starts out with a samurai film, and then it's a Yakuza. No, it's it's an escape drama, and then they meet a bunch of Yakuza. So now it's a mafia movie, except they kill a guy and he comes right back to life. Like, how many of what?
And then we get to the 5th minute of the movie right after that.
Yeah, literally.
It doesn't end up. It's like you said, like from scene to scene. It's like, well, what do we need to be here? Like, I don't know. Let's just be kind of funny in this scene. Like, well, how about this scene? Like, well, I don't know. Let's get back to the whole gangsterism, because now we've got a plot that these Yakuza are waiting for their boss to arrive. The plot is so convoluted, but I love it. Like I said, it should have been leaner, because then it would have been even crazier. And like where we end up, by the way, can we just say, spoilers, everybody, we end up 100 years in the future, and
it runs the gamut, as one would say. It goes the full circle. We start in the past, spend most of the time in the present, and then end in the future. Why? Yes, of course. Why not? In the year 20XX.
I wish he had made a sequel. I'm dying to see that future war. Just kill me already. I'm tired of these battles. And then tell me something. At the end of the movie, does it turn out that who we've been following the entire time, the hero of the piece who runs away with the girl, and thank God he defeated the evil wizard, turns out to be the prick of the entire thing? Doesn't he seem like to have been destroying the world for 100 years?
Kind of.
Pretty much.
Just checking, because I found that to be a kind of a jarring twist there at the end, but a welcome one in a movie that just never let up.
Well, and that's the thing for in the movie with me, is like, you've mentioned it kind of already. Both of you have, like, the movie just never stopped. It is like downhilling the entire time for 2 hours. Yeah, I mean, again, we open with 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and then 100 years into now the present, and then 100 years into the future. It's like, Jesus. Yeah, you need all 2 hours to run, 200 years in total. And I don't think it's, again, I don't think that the scene at the end of the movie is unneeded, but it answers zero of the questions I have, which is like,
it's 100% needed. Are you crazy?
Well, it's needed.
I would let this movie I would let this movie run to 100 minutes if we could have that last 10 minutes, because that was the moment in the movie where, after a million moments like this, where I went, wait, what's happening? We're continuing.
It was one more moment of continuance in the movie.
Yeah.
It does have a lot of like false endings, but again, when you don't know where the movie's going, yeah, because it just fucking goes everywhere. I do like how there's every contrivance needed to get these characters out into the middle of the forest. Like, they couldn't have just met back in the city. It's like, nope, got to get you out here to the forest so that shenanigans can happen, so more people can die, so that everybody can. And there's also like the gun kata of it all too. They're trying to do like the way they're holding the guns. It's all very. I mean, it's all very stylized, but I love how they just, like you both have mentioned, the style doesn't seem to be any one thing. And one scene, they have like a John Woo-ism, a Sam Raimi-ism, and then just a Quentin Tarantino splattery bullshit. And it's like, that's three things in one scene. Okay. How many more can you fit into this movie? Oh, like a million more.
Well, and I don't want to hammer on physical media so much, because that doesn't need to be my entire personality. But the booklet of this and the special features of this really, really explain a lot of why all of this is happening like this. And as it turns out, like, the star of the movie was hanging out after hours with the director because, first off, they ran out of money literally every day and had to go earn money to shoot the next day, like many people of their time. And so they were literally just chilling. And he looks over at books in a bookshelf and goes, well, what if we add this to the movie after they've already filmed a whole bunch? And they're like, yeah, that'd be fun. Let's do that. And so they just get ideas from what they see and throw it in there. And so when you're doing this for months at a time, it turned into a big mess. And as it turned out, because this was filmed in 2000, there was only 3 people in the entirety of Japan that knew how to edit film on a computer. And so they took all that they had filmed, went to this guy, and just put it on his desk and said, please help us. And normally he would have been like, no, screw you. But they literally said, seriously, we don't have money to pay you, but I'm going to get money from making this movie. For some reason, he just happened to trust them and made verses out of the pile that they left on his desk. Like, this is a miracle that we were even able to see this.
It's amazing. Wasn't the final budget like 10 grand or something?
Way more than that. They started with 50 grand, and then they had to earn a whole bunch more after that. I think it ended up conflating to like 300,000 by the end of the day. But and I guess by the end of the day after day after day after day of earning it, and even more so, like, they were filming on one mountain, and then winter came and they started to get snow, so they had to travel to another mountain and find another place to stay. That, like, being able to do that and still make this movie is how, like, that's astonishing.
And that is the thing that I appreciate about this movie, same that I think we would appreciate about something like a Sam Raimi, or even, I mean, you mentioned From Dusk Till Dawn. I mean, that was still, it was early in Rodriguez's career. I mean, obviously it's pretty big, but it's not, $200 million movie big. But the amount of just, again, guerrilla filmmaking, just fucking make the movie. Just make the goddamn. There is something to be said for that. Like, that's just not, I'm not saying that's not a thing anymore, because it is. I mean, Jesus Christ, at the Oscars recently, we had a director sitting and complaining about this on the biggest stage, which is the best place to do it. Please, by all means, tell the industry to their fucking face. If you're going to do it anywhere, do it there. But it's kind of disappointing to see what people can do with, like, jack shit, some spit and twine, when we have movies that, again, $200, $300, $400, $500 million. And, Dakota Johnson has to go out there and tell everybody why this is a movie worth seeing through gritted teeth. And it's like, Ryuhei Kitamura is not sitting and saying that this is a piece of shit movie. He's sitting and proud that this movie is on Arrow. It's getting a Blu-ray release because it's a labor of love.
If I may add a little perspective, I was reading today about Warren Beatty's fiasco Town and Country, which came out the same year as this film in 2000. That tiny romantic comedy ended up costing, with advertising, $120 million.
Jesus Christ. In
Nice.
$2,000.
Yeah.
Free 9/11 money.
The biggest flop New Line Cinema ever had. Yeah.
Ugh.
Oof.
So this was going on even then. It isn't necessarily that we're only making $200 million movies now, although it certainly feels that way. But, like, the largesse.
It hurts more now because it feels like there are, in a lot of ways, less. I mean, you mentioned it before we started recording. In a lot of ways, there are less opportunities than there used to be, because the studio system has verticalized itself so much that it is harder. It's easier and harder. I mean, look, we all have phones, we all have the internet, but if you want to make something and really make something, it still requires a lot of money. And Now there are more hoops to jump through than there ever have been before, good and bad. So people aren't getting accidentally murdered on the sets by guns with real ammunition in them, or any of the other horrible things that can happen to you on a set that you don't even think about, because most people don't even fucking think about the things that can happen to you on a set. But it's astounding to see something like this come out of... I saw that same thing, Ryan, where they were talking about just putting it on the editor's desk. Like, Jesus, what a thankless job that must have been. Just sit there and be like, well, what have I gotten myself into?
And to not get paid for it, that's so much worse.
And there must have been so much footage and so out of sequence and out of joint. And, oh my God, what a nightmare. That he's the real hero here.
Well, and again, as much as it is kind of a bloated ideas just being thrown at the wall piece, it hangs together better than most of these kinds of things tend. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is a indie horror movie. Yes, it's a zombie movie. Yes, it's a Yakuza samurai sword thing. I mean, again, like I keep saying samurai sword is that changes anything, but like there's just an aesthetic to what they're going for with.
Oh, it's a comic book, baby. Like,
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
The members of the gang is super stylized, and then more assassins show up, and one has flaming red hair standing straight up, and this guy's got knives, and that one's got glasses. Look out for him.
and our female lead is wearing white like the entire movie, and like rarely gets any blood on her too. Like it's again, like I don't know, they knew what they were doing, but most of the time these kinds of movies don't hold together as well as this one does.
It's absolutely true. And then they start the first 50 caliber gunfight.
Yeah, and then
I love the gunfights in this because, like, more often than not, you're getting this big sparkly flash that you can tell it's just like some sort of firework they've jammed into the barrel of a gun. Oh man, it makes me so happy.
It works better than I thought it would, because I was really worried initially that the movie was going to seem kind of, I don't know, the early 2000s do have a certain thing to them with horror, right? Like there's just something about
Oh my
early...
God. Well,
It was a terrible period for horror.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but like there's a lot of things from that time that I don't think very highly of, including franchise movies and franchises that I like. Looking at You, Scream 3, which I think is like a very good like example of that.
Or the entire Platinum Dunes. Ooh.
Don't even pronounce the word correctly. They don't deserve it. Yeah, I mean, hey, I still will defend that Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but that's it. That's the only one.
You know which group really pisses me off the most during that period was Dark Castle. Those guys had all the fucking William Castle movies, and they were like, let's just make what everyone else is making, but even more pandering.
Chris Kattan's in one of those movies.
Yeah, I know.
The worst one.
The worst one. That I have watched that movie several times, and I couldn't tell you a single goddamn thing that happens in that movie. Like it's such a
terrible. How about that?
Yeah, it's convoluted.
There's a really weird chimney death. That's all I remember.
They took one of the more fun William Castle flicks at the end.
Yep.
Could have made it so fucking good, but just would like good enough, pricks. I'm looking at you, Zemeckis.
Hey. He brought us Tales. Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Never
He has a lot to atone for.
He really does. He really does at this point. That's the thing, like horror in the early 2000s, like I guess what is it? Are we talking like 99 to 2001? Because after 2001, it just becomes Saw and Hostel and a lot of like torture porn, right? Post 2001.
Well, that becomes the sort of newest genre, quote unquote.
Right.
Like it becomes predominant in a way, but not terrifically so. Like there weren't 1,000 torture porn movies. There were just sort of a select few. I just think their impact was really heavy. That's all.
Well, and the torture porn really didn't even hit heavy until Saw 2 came out, which was like 2005, I think.
Yeah,
before that,
it's not a torture
like
porn.
no, it's more than
is.
it's a mystery basically.
Yeah, it's a cop thriller. It's so much like a cop movie, like all the Danny. I mean, obviously, I know you're a huge fan, and I mean, Saw. I think is a deeply flawed franchise, but in a good way. Like it has problems, but those problems are what makes it Saw. But yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I guess thinking about early 2000s horror, like it was not a great time for horror movies, and specifically, as the kids are saying these days, zombie stuff, like. At not even being touched, right? Like what?
Well, it didn't exist until
Wright,
Shaun of the Dead and 28 Days Later. Yeah.
Not the way it does now. And obviously Robert Kirkman. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The Walking Dead was the final sort of nail in that coffin.
Man, it's
that
too
keeps
bad
being
that
driven.
I was about to say, how many more nails are we going to say there are at this point? Because that shit's still going in 2024. As of this recording, Walking Dead is still on TV show in some form or fashion.
Going on 14 years.
God, zombie stuff just, I don't know, Father Malone, I know how much you love zombies, but like I grew up in a time where the zombie stuff was that stuff. And it was
listen.
It's hard to like, I enjoy the stuff that you enjoy, but like there is not a lot else to enjoy past a certain time with zombie stuff, like at all.
I think like everything, you just got to be selective where you go, because I think, there's always going to be some wheat there in that chaff. But when I was growing up, there were, a handful of zombie movies, and zombies were my favorite. You know this, George Romero's my favorite. So, it always felt like a weird little outsider secret kind of thing if you love zombies. And then once 2000 hit, it was like everything is zombie, plush zombie, playthings for your kids, like zombie slippers, like, it's enough with the zombies already. But there's a particular kind of zombie at play here in this movie that I really like, because they're still doing kung fu. They seem to have all their faculties.
Kung fu zombies.
Yeah, man. They're swinging swords.
Faculties and hairstyles. That's all they have.
Totally. And I loved there's a lot of ideas in this movie, but plot-wise, just the idea of a bunch of Yakuza being stuck in a forest where all of their victims had buried now come to life to take revenge on them. I love that. And I love a century-spanning romance, maybe, / conflict. Oh, we've got that too. I don't know. I'm just still marveling. The movie kind of puzzles me that it was able to straddle so many genres. And to keep my attention during each of the periods, Like, I don't know about you, but I had forgotten entirely the opening of this movie by the time it was revealed, like, what the fuck was actually happening in the film. I went, oh, yeah. Oh, so I don't know. I haven't done that in an American movie in quite some time. So
I appreciated that about the movie as well. Because, once we get to it was about 2/3 of the way, about halfway through the third act of the movie. It turns out that, oh, yes, in fact, I guess the person who was not there in time to save him at the beginning is our hero this entire time, right?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, he technically is for the story we're telling. If you didn't have the epilogue, you were going to jump forward in time, then yes. What turns out to be some hardened criminal who's, harsh and not very forgiving, turns out to be a centuries-old hero battling this evil sorcerer. But add the post-apocalypse, and no, it was actually the opposite all along.
It feels like one last trick, right? Like up the movie's sleeve, right? Like
I marveled at that. I thought that was a kind of a gut punch right there at the end. Like, oh wait, you fucker, he was the villain.
I don't think an American film would have the audacity to put something like that in the last minute of their movie, would they? Like they have those.
I don't know. The mist ends with the lead character shooting everyone, including his son, and then trying to kill himself and not being able to, and then everything's okay, everybody.
Speaking of Frank Marshall, God, yeah, that's fair. But I mean, American films don't end on bummer notes like that. The only movies that are allowed to end that way are dramas and horror movies.
Successful American movies don't end that way.
Right. Right. Fair. Don't send them out crying. Send them out laughing. Send them out happy. Don't send the crowd out thinking about something. Send them out ready to eat more popcorn and drink more sodas. That's the thing. Like what zombies have become is a commodified good at this point that can be trotted out for everybody to have a good time with. Like, I mean, Plants vs. Zombies is right there in terms of the video game world. Like there are so many things that took zombies from, again, a thing that had existed in not just pop culture, but in in Chinese myth, the hopping zombie. I mean, these are all things that have existed long before. And now it's just, it's like stupid zombie bacon. Just like the stupidest shit that makes your just like fucking eyes roll. And that's why I've never wanted to like revisit zombie movies on the Culture Cast, because like, what is there to say about the ones that haven't already been talked about to death? Because a lot of good ones haven't really come out in a long time. I know this is a splatter movie, but it's also, I think, a zombie movie, obviously, at its core.
Well, are they zombies ultimately? They seem to be possessed of this sorcerer.
Undead, like ghoul, not
like,
ghouls, not Rita Wilson.
I think they're closer to the Evil Dead, right? Like,
yeah, got like magical undead versus Evil Dead.
Oh, I'd watch it.
Yeah, hell yeah! Don't give me Pinhead and what were they talking about? It was Ash versus Freddy and Jason, or Pinhead versus Freddy and Jason. Don't give me that. Give me Ash versus. Just a bunch of zombies. But then that's pretty much just Evil Dead. Just put Evil Dead in Japan. That's what we're asking.
Yes, do that, please.
Which is kind of what they did in the third act. I mean, it's this movie.
Yeah.
That third act, he embraced Sam Raimi like crazy. He leaned into every Sam Raimi film for a minute.
He's got some it's an overall Highlander in here too, with the sword play and the immortals and shit.
It's such a mix of things that it's hard to pin it down as just one thing. But I think that's what makes this obviously a film that gets released on Arrow Blu-ray. It's a movie that, you know, the director has talked about even as recently as, I think, 2013, 14 about making a sequel. I mean, he's talked about it, and he hasn't been doing nothing. He's worked on, you know, The Midnight Meat Train and a couple other American films. I know I believe he had a section on Nightmare Cinema. And I know he directed, it was a Shudder movie, Downrange, I think, where it's like a girl being hunted by people with sniper rifles or something. It was on Shudder, I'm pretty sure. Sounds interesting. I mean, you know, Midnight Meat Train's good. I mean, that's the thing. This director knows what he's doing. It's not like he stopped after this movie, which, you know, has not, you know, we've seen that before. There's plenty of movies where this is their one thing and they're known for the one thing and there's nothing else. I mean, he has a track record here of working on other things. So, which is good. I mean, again, like I like what he does with the camera. It does kind of become a little much at the end, but I think this movie is just a little much. But that's the point. Like, it is supposed to be overwhelming in what it is, just constantly bombarding you with just every single thing. It could have been a manga. It really could have. It feels like a manga in a lot of ways.
Basically is, yeah.
Yeah, with just the amount of just like melancholy and like elevated drama, and everything is so epic, and they're fighting with these swords that have these wild pommels on them. It's just, I mean, everything. Yeah, it's super comic booky and just stylized is probably understated.
Well, and that's the other style that I wanted to bring up, because I didn't want to forget it, because it's so important with the way that he uses practical weapons and so many just random ass pieces of just weird machinery in the middle of the forest. I don't know if you read this, but he basically was a school dropout. And then he always loved Australia and went to Australia and went to a film school there and said, "Hey, I like movies. Let me be a student here." And they thought he was funny, so they let him into the film school. And that's the only reason he learned to do any of this. And now you can clearly see some of these direct inspiration from the Mad Max films, like the way that they compile weapons together, and they almost, they're like Transformers in a couple of the scenes. They pulled certain pieces out, and it's like, oh my god, how are you hiding that in there? It's clearly like ripping off some of the things that he saw in this Australian film school.
Oh yeah, the Yakuza assassins who show up sort of midway through the movie are clearly stepped out of the outback.
Yep. Oh, it's perfect.
And again, like I feel like for me, that's what these kinds of movies bring. And I mean, again, like I'm talking more of these kind of cult films, not splatter films, because I mean, the term splatter film, I think, is such a, I think it's more, movies can be splatter films, but splatter films aren't necessarily one thing, right? I mean, unless we're talking like a street trash, I guess.
Again, I still say that's a melt movie, not a splatter movie.
Yeah. But could splatter movies also be melt movies?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, because a splatter movie, there's an active killer stabbing, and
splatter movie is like gore being applied to somebody, and a melt movie is like chemical decomposition.
Yeah, you wouldn't say The Stuff is a splatter movie.
Exactly. Good example.
So I guess to bring it back to splatter films for Father Malone and for you, Ryan, since this is the only time you guys are going to be on this month, what are some splatter films that you guys gravitate towards, that you guys, outside of this one, given that this is a first watch for the three of them?
Geez, I mean, for me, splatter is anything sort of early 80s murdery kind of things. But I think, obviously I said anything with Sam Raimi is perfect, but any of the early work by, I'm going to be just old here and mention movies from fucking 30 years ago, but any of Peter Jackson's early work is just about as good as splatter as you're ever going to see. As a guy who really cares about the gore and presents it in a fucking ridiculous manner.
We just talked about Peter Jackson and Brain Dead or Dead Alive, whatever the hell you want. I think that's like up there in like the top for the conversation.
Gotta
right?
be.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Revolting in places. Like Meet the Feebles is pretty close, like for just disgusting bodily function.
How about you, Ryan?
I mean, he took the obvious answer, so I'm going to throw out some very obvious ones too. I'm going to go with a lot of the ones from Stuart Gordon, especially something obvious like Reanimator. It's a go-to. But if you want something more akin to this film, that's from that era, that's from that corner of the world, and highly loved, especially for cult films like this, it's really hard to go wrong with Riki-Oh. That movie. Yeah. That movie, it has some scenes where, like this movie you're watching, and you just like throw your hands up and go, I mean, I never saw that coming, but I didn't know it was possible for us to even see that on film. So I'll accept it. And then they one-up it in the next scene. And you're like, well, fuck, now what do I do? Because I had set my expectations for this movie, and you just keep throwing them out. And it's so wild to see what they accomplish in that movie. And I mean, it's still like sought after as one of the more, I won't even say like extreme, but just like over the top fun movies that everybody should have had passed to them by an older brother in 2003.
Ricky, you are our hopes and you are our dream. Riki-Oh is a good one. I mean, speaking of live action manga, like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That really leads, he's punching holes through people. That's where I'm real. We signed me up for that. I mean, Riki-Oh is a good one. I would say that this is a good example to mention. It's probably not something that necessarily I resonate with, but I think a good modern example is Terrifier for all of its good and bad. Father Malone, are you a fan of Terrifier? We've never brought it up between the two of us. Not surprisingly. Maybe that answers all I need to ask.
I'm fine with it.
Right?
But look, at what you're saying as a modern example of good splatter. Yes, I totally agree with that. It is not my cup of tea. I don't understand the crazed fanaticism revolving around that movie and that series and that character. But hey, like people didn't understand that I love zombies when I was 15. So
yeah, I saw the first one. I think Ryan, have you seen the second one, or you've?
I saw it in theaters even.
Man. Well, it's like as long as the extended version of this movie. I'm pretty sure it's like 2.5 hours, right?
No, it's much longer than this movie. Not by much, actually. No, but the big thing, this is going to sound pretentious as fuck, but just, I am always so excited to see cult movies take off that I try to genuinely go out and give that support in the theater, because it's so fucking rare that they get a chance, that it deserves something like that. And even though Terrifier 2, it's not great, in my opinion, I still prefer the first one, even though there was zero plot, but it was still worth it just to say, like, Terrifier 2 making $7 million or whatever, that's amazing. That never should have happened.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think that's pretentious at all, by the way. Yeah, fucking supporting movies we love. Like, put this in the theater. I'll go see it right now if it guarantee we get a fucking sequel.
Same.
I don't think it's pretentious as much as, again, I think it's acknowledging the reality of some of these movies, which is, I'm not here for them. Like Terrifier 1, you mentioned the thing that ends up being, I think, what I've read to be the issue with the second one, which is, here's all the plot you could ever want. It's like, you misread the problem. I don't think it's that there wasn't a plot. It's not, we don't need like 8 hours of plot now, you psychos. I think if people are interested in seeing kills, there is a time and a place for that. That's just not my thing. I want there to be more than just gore. And there are plenty of movies that check that box as well. So maybe I sound like the pretentious one now, but at the same time, that's okay. I don't get off on these kinds of things the way I used to. They don't motivate me the way that they used to. And they did at one point. We all probably had a moment where we wanted to see Faces of Death and all that shit. Like, there's a moment, I mean, these two are laughing. This is not a visual medium at the moment, but they're laughing because it's the fucking case. At least for film watching dudes of a certain age, of a certain ilk, we've all subjected ourselves to some of the worst things cinema has to offer to push our limits, to see what is the bar. And something like Terrifier 2, I think, sets that bar pretty high, but splatter films, in my mind, are part of that. Like, that's part of the conversation, is they were pushing the envelope to see what they could do that's reasonably acceptable in, again, film society. Because, I mean, Terrifier 2, I think, pushed it pretty far from what I've heard. People vomiting and shit in the theater, which, I mean, people got weak stomachs. Don't go see Terrifier. This ain't Bambi. What were you expecting? In the first movie, he saws a woman in half on screen. What were you expecting? Them to lower the stakes in the second movie?
I always kind of feel a bit suspect when I hear about the vomiting in movie theaters. They've been saying it since the fucking 50s, you know?
Since the end, yeah. I remember the vomit bags for The Exorcist. Like, that's a thing that they always talk about. It's like, were people actually vomiting while watching The Exorcist?
They may have been, you know, but like, that just means there's a certain amount of the population that just shouldn't be seeing horror movies.
They just can't hack it watching a woman be split from groin to navel upside down, even on top.
It's okay. I don't like musicals, so like, you know.
Apt comparison.
You know, it is though. Like
a section,
not for me, maybe, but
Jonathan Groff singing.
Yeah, no, I'm not into it.
You know, and in a month where you're talking about splatter movies and what you just alluded to, you probably should bring up at least once that old iceberg of extreme cinema where above the surface is like the most basic, like Monster Squad or something. And then these types of movies, splatter, will probably be fairly shallow under the surface there. It'll be like first or second level. You'll probably have Dead Alive just above Versus, just because of all the comedy. And then, of course, you know, at the bottom, you've got the stuff that was only made to shock people. And that's funny enough. A lot of people, when they start hearing about this, they start going to some of the obvious ones like Martyrs. And that's pretty extreme, but that's also not that underground. There's a lot of underground shit that was made just to be shocking that is god awful. But there's some things they show that just should never have been put on film.
What is the hamster? Something about hamsters? There's some that who the fuck? Where somebody always brings something up, but I can never remember the name. Something about something girl or something.
You're thinking about American Guinea Pig,
yeah,
or the Guinea Pig series, yeah. There's a handful of films, and then there's some American films that are trying to ape that original series that are made to be shocking. And like the best one is one called Mermaid in a Manhole. And why do I know this much? Anyways,
fuck, dude. I was about to say, like I said, the three of us had different responses. You've just outed yourself, pal.
I'm probably the only one of the panel that like genuinely enjoyed a Serbian film, and it's not.
I've seen it more than once. I did an episode on it. It's not my favorite movie. I don't put it on for company, but
well, I watched it with my wife. That's the thing. Like we.
It was weird. Father Malone, I went to visit Ryan at his house and we were hanging out and he's like, we're going to have a family movie night. And he put on a Serbian film for us and his family. And I was just like, it's just different around these parts. I
feel so vanilla right now. I like Sam Raimi.
I don't like one of the like most egregious things put to film ever. Ugh. Yes, continue. Sorry, before we interrupted you about your love of a Serbian.
I don't love it. It's that's what I'm getting at though, is everybody, like hardly anybody's actually seen a Serbian film and they just refer to it as shocking. And so, yeah, a Serbian film is 3 or 4 levels below these splatter films on that iceberg, but there's still like 2 or 3 levels below it where you find stuff like August Underground and Thanatomorphose and stuff like that people have never even heard of that are just like, they're not good movies, but they're literally only cobbled together to shock people. And to find what level that you're okay with and watch that level. That's all I'm getting at.
Well, and the question also becomes, and you mentioned it, at what point has it lost any of its quote entertainment value, unquote?
Right.
Is it being made purely for? And again, I'm not saying things without entertainment value have no value. I'm just saying it can't be entertaining. It could be subversive. It could be. Right. It could be, and that's what this is. It's just to be subversive, which is fine. I have no problem with people being subversive. And to really be subversive, you have to push it. Like the people that do it best really push it. Father Malone, Knight, Mr. Walters, Andy Kaufman pushed it about as far as you could go in a lot of ways with being subversive.
You know, when I was growing up, speaking to like this idea that everyone talks about this movie like it's the worst thing ever, and most people haven't seen it. Like for my generation, that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Everyone kept talking about how horrific that was, and there's, you know, as you know, there's virtually no gore in that movie at all. It's all it's just mood. So, yeah.
I love that movie for how grimy it is.
Yeah, and like a Serbian film, I've seen it. And now I never need to see it again, just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But, you know, like at that time when Texas Chainsaw came out, like that might as well have been Serbian movie, while there was like Cannibal Ferox and Cannibal Holocaust and those really underground fucking horrific splattery movies going on in the 70s. So yeah, there's always a level to be dug to. But as you said, they're not good movies. They're an endurance test, if anything. But people are always looking to push the boundary, man.
Well, and the question becomes, at what point do you just go and watch like actual snuff films on the internet? Like, I'm just saying, at some point there will be a limit that you have reached that you cannot satiate through watching cinema, and you will go and watch. And there's footage on the internet. Yeah,
that person was always going to be the fucking lunatic, looking for that anyway. They didn't need horror movies to get them there. They want people.
You don't blame the movies. Movies don't make the psychos. Yeah,
you felt vanilla now. I feel like a psycho.
I was going to say, I feel like a psycho too here now. Uh-oh.
I mean, and that's probably a generational thing, but I really think that there's, this whole iceberg of extreme horror is a thing, but also once the internet came along, half of the people have seen like ISIS beheadings and Rotten.com and stuff.
I've seen all of that. I was about to say, you clearly have too. That's why you felt like a weirdo. Right. Well, yeah.
It's just kind of a part of this nowadays.
Yeah, 9/11, I mean, like, we saw people die on 9/11 as, like, children, like, as 11-year-olds. Like, I saw shit that, like, kids today can't fathom, and they don't even show it to them. They tell them about it. They're like, oh, yeah, this happened. Oh, yeah, we saw it fucking happen. You were a fucking adult, Father Malone, more than us. Like, we were, like, teenage. Like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's hard to square that away. Because as an 11-year-old, I saw like thousands of people died like over and over on a fucking loop for fucking 48 hours. Like, how does that not fuck you up? How does that not do something? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there was something like that you would have had access to, Father Malone, on TV at the time. Like,
no, but I had seen every videotape that had been passed around, and there's always been horrible shit if you want to find it. Somebody has always filming something terrible since the beginning of time. So, or the beginning of photography, let's say.
There's always an older brother. That's for sure.
Exactly.
There's always an elephant that needs to be electrocuted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I sat down to do this month with splatter films, I wanted to find things that would still have some narrative value, because my concern was like the lower part of the iceberg, because some of it is appealing to do, but also like some people are gonna be like, there's no fucking way I'm gonna watch this. The fact that I had a guest on the A Serbian Film podcast who I'm still friends with and I didn't scare them away permanently is shocking. Like,
listen, Versus has enough fucking plot and crazy
it does
things for like 10 of those movies. So you chose wisely with this particular splatter choice.
This is a great choice.
Yeah. I mean, look, it didn't get released on Arrow for no reason. And a nice looking copy, too. I saw that the box art looks nice. I would watch a fucking sequel to this movie in a heartbeat.
And the old school art.
Yeah, the old school art's great, too. I like people who have interesting ideas. And now that's the best part right there. A man screaming in agony.
I'd watch a series of this.
And it easily could have been. Like, the hidden lore that's not shown on this, there's so much they could have dove into.
Yeah, he needs to refocus his efforts, not for another feature, but a streaming series.
I mean, you could remake this in the States. I mean, he's also talked about that, remaking it like an American version.
Which he should, and this is how he should do it. And I have no problem following any of these characters for a full episode.
Yeah, well, totally. And like, that's the thing. In a lot of ways, when we say like, oh, this movie has a lot of good ideas, movies that have a lot of good ideas often have a lot of good ideas and not a lot of time to get into all of them. And that's this movie. Like, it introduces so much that, like you just mentioned, Ryan, there was so much that I wanted to know more about that the movie then just like in a lot of ways, speaking of Evil Dead, the way that the Evil Dead movies are, depending on which version of Army of Darkness you've seen, how that movie ends, one of three motherfucking ways. The version that I like is the one where he is at the future, like he sleeps too long. Like, that's the funniest ending, right? Like, that's also the most interesting ending in a lot of ways. Because like, what does that mean for our character now? And like, that's where this leaves, is like, what? So we've seen this, like, whoa, all of a sudden that was all just like a backstory for this. And that's exciting in and of itself, because what does that mean for the furtherance of the narrative? It does kind of feel like a shame that there's not a sequel yet or something, because I mean, again, there's a lot going on here that's interesting. It's just, it needed to be somehow a 2 hour and 10-minute movie needed to be another hour, 2 or 3 long. That's the thing. Like you said, it needed to be shorter because there's too much stuff. But if you actually embrace it for what it is, it needs to be longer, theoretically. It needs to have more time. Yeah, but then we're talking about a TV show. We're not talking about a movie anymore.
Who cares?
Right.
Well, that's fine, but that's my point. Like, that's my point. Like, I think ultimately, like, in so many ways, like, TV is the way to tell stories that need time, like, to breathe.
Yeah,
like,
the unfortunate thing is what ends up happening is what we're getting is feature films stretched out to 10 episodes where they have to fill in a lot of shit. It is a bunch of padding. Whereas something like this deserves 10 episodes. I want to spend 10 hours learning about everything going on here.
Yeah. Like, give me one episode just about the forest and the people in the forest, and like have it be 3 small stories in one episode about 3 different people who are dead in the forest. Like, there you go. There's a thing. And again, like, and the movie kind of hints that there's so much else going on here within this forest. And yeah, I don't know. This was a fun movie. I'm glad that this was effectively ended up being the way the month got opened, because I think it sets the bar pretty for
Good luck.
Yeah. The next movie is Blood Feast, so...
Oh, well, classic.
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be the first one, but, it's that time of the year where people get sick really easily, thanks everything in the world, and allergies galore. So this ended up being the first recording. So it set the bar pretty high, for sure. All right, Father Malone, final thoughts on Versus?
Well worth a watch. I mean, it's too long, but I made that point. But overall... it's so inventive and fun and an ode to a bunch of movies that I love anyway, but really carving out his own thing here, honestly. Like, what I worried would be like the late 90s ticks of action movies turns out to be a strength in this case. And that's an amazing feat. Check it out.
What about you, Ryan?
Not only is it a good movie for anybody that loves zombies or gunfighting or fist fighting or samurai fighting or what other fighting?
Caliber sniper rifle fighting.
That's true. It is a good movie for people that are interested in things that push the boundaries of cinema at the time, because this absolutely did. And if you want the best version of it, I have to say physical media here is the king, because man, both cuts, lots of extra features, really nice informative booklet. Check it out if you can. Still available, still in print. Got originally released, I think, in just 2020 in like December. So it's absolutely still out there. Incredible film.
Yeah, I agree. It was like I mentioned going into the end there, it sets the bar rather high for the rest of the month. And we know that there will be, at least one more good movie, at least a classic coming up. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm excited to talk about everything this year because, again, for the most part, it's nothing I've ever seen before, which is the way I like to do it here. I don't want to just watch things I've seen a million times and talk about it, but could. So I think it's just more fun to talk about things that nobody's necessarily talking about all the time. But to your point, Ryan, you can't get this on physical media from Arrow, so it's not like it's completely unknown. So yeah, I'm glad we all enjoyed it. That's a win in my book. So on that note, we'll take a break, play some ads, and we'll play an ad for the next Culture Cast.
From Weirding Way Media, Cambridge and Washon is a podcast about two guys' obsessions, passions, and hobbies. Those two guys are
Mark Begley, host of Wake Up Heavy, Recollections of Horror,
and Ronald Zerigian, host of the Skelevator YouTube channel.
Each month we talk about the toys, comics, movies, books, TV shows, and other cultural phenomena that captured our imaginations and helped shape who we are today.
From Masters of the Universe to Saturday Night Live, Star Wars to Harry Houdini, The Muppets to The Elephant Man, Ronnie and Mark dive deep into the recesses of their minds to pull out treasured memories of things lost but never forgotten.
Join us on the first Tuesday of each month over at weirdingwaymedia.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Join me, Jamie Benning, on the Filmumentaries podcast, particularly if you enjoy stories like designer Nilo Rodis Jamiro convincing George Lucas to push him around to help gain the support of his crew on the ailing Howard the Duck.
Blam! The door opens. It's George. Everybody gasps. George makes a beeline to me. I'm literally back against the wall.
Or hear puppeteer Tim Rose's emotional story behind that iconic Admiral Akbar shot in Return of the Jedi.
I believe that war is something to be proud of, but not to celebrate.
Or how Star Wars editor Paul Hirsch tackled cutting so many successful films.
The thing that I learned from working with De Palma is that tension depends on a clock. You need to have the sense that time is running out.
Maybe Oscar-winning sound designer Mark Mangini's insightful chat about his work on Blade Runner 2049.
Not a single sound from the original Blade Runner in the new film. A great deal of inspiration.
That's the Filmumentaries podcast with me, Jamie Benning.
Hello, Twisted Humans. Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting? Then this is the podcast for you. In 1952, there was a record high of UFOs reported. 1,500 sightings. There has been evidence of human sacrifice, devil worship, and it is haunted by more spirits than can be counted. A family of 2 adults and 2 kids reportedly saw a giant flying thing with glowing red eyes. And meanwhile, the family's nanny that helped Veronica to care for her and Lucian's children was found bludgeoned to death in the basement of their family home. I'm Alicia. And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness some scenes from the next attraction to play this theater. This picture, truly one of the most unusual ever filmed, contains scenes which under no circumstances should be viewed by anyone with a heart condition or anyone who is easily upset. We urgently recommend that if you are such a person or the parent of a young or impressionable child now in attendance, that you and the child leave the auditorium for the next 90 seconds.
Right in the next Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about Blood Feast, another movie I've never seen, but going to be joined by Rod Lott and Andy Roush to talk all about that movie, which is a movie about blood and feasting on it. Until then, Father Malone, where can people find you?
Find me over at Weirding Way Media, where you can hear, I don't know, I'm on a couple of shows, but main one being Midnight Viewing, the horror anthology podcast, where we're currently taking a look at Tales from the Dark Side. Check us out over there. It's a brand new season, brand new series. We got interviews with the creators and cast. You can also hear me on Night Mr. Walters, the taxi podcast I do with my partner HP. Yeah, check those out.
Father Malone's burning it burning the oil hard over on Midnight Viewing. You're doing the thing now. You're doing the thing. You got interviews, man. What happened?
Exhausting. It's exhausting.
I know. I was like, you're doing the thing now. It's like, goddamn, man. Jesus.
I regret not doing it for Twilight Zone, actually.
You can always go back.
I am, actually. Well, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Well, yeah. By the way, Midnight Viewing's we're having bonus episodes now where we look at not just the series we've covered, but any or anthology series. Those are upcoming, the bonus episodes. Check them out. Starting with the Shadow Man, the Rockne O'Bannon, Joe Dante Twilight Zone episode, Twilight Zone 85.
Oh, no. You're chasing your own tail now, too. I love it. You're like, you're going back for more? You're double dipping?
Oh, yeah. In this case, definitely. With an interview with Rockne O'Bannon about it. So, yeah.
Love it. What about you, Ryan? Where can we find you?
Everywhere, social media, YouTube, podcasts under the name The Disc Connected for all things physical media. And then I also have a production company called Someone's Favorite Productions, which has a podcast network with all kinds of great shows over there. Beyond that, if you are into physical media, we are appearing on far too many releases to keep up with, just naming them all right now. So keep an eye out. We will happily announce all those. And just sharing good cinema.
I'll echo Father Malone. Weirding Way Media is where you can find everything that I work on. And yeah, I will reiterate once again, Weirding Way Media is named for our love of Dune. So there you go. As for me, I'm on social media, but you don't have to follow me there. Just follow the podcast, like, rate, and review wherever you get it, which is more than likely iTunes. Father Malone and Ryan, thank you both so much for joining me, and we will catch you both on the next episode.